must admit, I'm a tiny little bit nervous because I'm a big fan, obviously, of your podcast. I listen to it a lot, even though I'm not a marketeer. And yeah, it's just great having you in this event. I would love to offer you a drink. We were starting here with rum and whiskey, and our colleague Elias just brought me some Berliner Luft. Are you having something?
I will certainly. Can somebody bring me a drink here, please? I asked my colleague.
Okay. So
we get something. I get something. I'll be there with it. Let's start, and I come up with something in a minute.
Okay. So I don't think I need to introduce you too much. The people here will know you. You are probably in marketing one of the most known personas, at least in the DACH region, I guess also beyond. You were actually a founder, and now there's something funny. I mean, like, I'm managing director at Project A, and I think you were a founder of a Project A company.
Absolutely.
And believe it or not, I was not really aware of that because that happened, I think, really like most of it before my time. It was Metrigo, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really like happy with Project. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Project A because they helped me like start the business. And I mean, I admit we did not return the fund. We did not like really like enrich your colleagues very much. But at least I think we brought the money back that you gave us and even a little more. So we didn't like cause any losses for Project A, and we returned the money and you know, like a small return as well. It was very supportive. I'm very close with Anton and Uwe and especially Florian since then. They were really early supporters of what we did, and I'm very grateful for that.
Really nice. So I bet there will be a lot of questions to you also from the audience. So please write them in the chat, and our chat manager will actually like give me like a condensation of that here on a screen, and we'll talk later about that. You were also you worked also for some time as an investment manager. So you did investment managing. You obviously have a strong footprint in marketing. You're doing OMR, which is the festival, it's the podcast. I think there are educational formats. It's like a whole universe about this online marketing rock stars thing. Out of everything you did, and excluding what you're doing right at the moment, what did you enjoy most?
I mean, the podcast is just an incredible adventure for me. I mean, it's the magic of having the timing right, and it's also like a lot of luck. I mean, I started the podcast 5 years ago. Today we know that was the best timing you could have. I didn't know that at the time. I just had twin babies at the time, and were like driving them around quite a bit in the baby cart, and had nothing else to do while driving the baby cart. So I was listening to American podcasts, and then thought, okay, well, I might as well try this myself. That was at the very best time, and now it led me to like meeting all kinds of celebrities, interesting people. Like it leveraged my life basically. Beyond what money can do. For instance, like we're talking on a Friday, the Monday, like after the weekend, I'm driving to Wolfsburg, meeting Herbert Diess, the CEO of Volkswagen, for the podcast. You're getting like basically intros to everybody now, thanks to the podcast, and it shows you how powerful content can be. And I'm a huge content fan, so this was probably the biggest single, game changer for me, and I enjoy it very much.
And it goes far. I think the podcast also now goes, I mean, you always had this strong focus on marketing, but it goes far beyond. I mean, you really talk with decision makers more about their overall business models, and you have a much wider functional range that you cover now than only marketing. That seems to go easy for you to like really make your I mean, probably because of your background as a founder and investment manager.
Yeah, I mean, being a founder is like being an entrepreneur is really helpful for being a journalist, and I think vice versa. Because I mean, in the end, journalism, and I'm obviously not the most investigative journalist, but I think what we do is a little bit of journalism, and that means like accessing people, getting to ask questions, getting permission to ask questions, and getting access to people and all these things. And I think it's very close to what a founder needs to do. I mean, he needs to like win over customers, win over investors. It's a very similar game. And I think it's been a little bit of best of both worlds. Like doing this podcast has a lot to do with being a journalist, but also like finding ways to like create more reach for the podcast. And this is how it all started. I mean, I started out with Florian Heinemann and, like guys, like heroes from our industry. But then I asked myself, how can I like gain more audience? And this is when I first reached out to like Dieter Bohlen and other German celebrities. And then it took me all the way to Billie Eilish and huge like international celebrities. Basically, it's what we try to do is like in podcasts, it's really hard to establish reach. And one of the most powerful reach tools is having celebrity guests. That's just the truth of how it works. And I realized this 3-4 years ago, and this completely matched with like what I like to do, like meeting interesting people and asking them questions about business and asking them how much money they have and make. And this is, so this all came together.
Yeah, I think you're still doing a good portion of your podcast in German, actually, which of course is probably easier for your guests.
Yeah.
Your English, as far as I can judge, which is probably not much, but it seems very flawless. It would probably help your international reach if you would do it in English, even with the German guests. Why don't you do that more?
We noticed that we have like 20% less listeners when the podcast is in English. Okay. So this is really like causing basically like audience loss for us. And this is one thing. And I noticed that obviously if you speak English with your guests, you're like competing with all of the American podcast landscape. So if I have like a marketing professor from Berkeley or from NYU, from Harvard, chances are very big he's been on a US podcast before where he spoke like with a native English speaking host. So it's really hard to differentiate and to win the game with like international guests or against the American competition. And like speaking English to a German person on the podcast, I think it's not as native and it's not as obviously not as natural. So it really hinders you to build a community, because what you want to establish with a podcast is some kind of like social connection. There's tons of people that write me or that text me or like say hi to me on the train, Berlin, Hamburg, because they feel like we are friends. We know each other because they listen to the podcast, luckily, all the time. So they feel like they know me. And this is because I speak German, they are German. It's very, very like a parasocial relationship we have there. And you can't, I think, have this parasocial relationship with somebody that always notices you're speaking English. You're not like exactly close to me. You can't be my best buddy, because then you would be speaking my language.
There's a question from the audience, and it's not exactly about the language, but it's also about like how you deal with your guests and which guests you pick, etc. And it's how do you stay true to your audience that expects marketing content, but then you are having guests like Dieter Bohlen?
I mean, good question. But the truth is that most of these celebrities or like big time entrepreneurs or politicians or like all these people that we have on, marketing in digital is relevant for everybody now. I mean, we're living in times where like Dieter Bohlen is like living on Instagram. He knows more about Instagram than probably like half of my company and like probably half of the audience here today, because he lives there. That's important to him. And same thing with other like celebrities, stars, entertainers, musicians. They really like leverage digital platforms. There's people that like in music business that do nothing but try to optimize and leverage Spotify, and so that goes on. So you basically find a digital or like a marketing connection with almost everybody. And now, like talking to the CEO of Volkswagen, obviously he has all this. He's now like big on LinkedIn. He's not having to deal with Tesla. There's so many digital questions that I can ask him that maybe Manager Magazine or other German outlets, media outlets would not ask him. And I try to like ask the bold questions. I try to ask him, or like ask people in general, how much money are they making? How much is this in terms of like what real people want to know? Like, are you rich now? With the idea, how big is the idea in terms of money? And that's in the end what people want to know. And if you combine that, I think you can find a connection with almost everybody.
Yeah. our CMO, Philipp Werner, I think you know each other. He often talks to me about often he repeated more than once how he still remembers being at Hamburg Media School. And I think you were an alumni. You came in, and he was sitting there, like listening to the profs, and you just came in basically as a guest. He says, very casual, with your backpack, just came in, just said. So he summarizes this like you came in. He said, you know what? Yeah, you learn here a lot about marketing. Forget all that. This is all going digital. We'll all work different. And then just gave them like the first heavy input sessions on what performance marketing will be about at the very beginning of it.
Yeah, I'm totally proud of that. I mean, I'm always like, I'm following what Philipp does and how he grew through the ranks at Project A. And I know that all the partners are really proud to have him. And I'm just as proud that, he's from Hamburg and from Hamburg Media School. And I was able to inspire maybe a little bit in the beginning. Yeah.
So, but where did it come from in you? I mean, like, how came that you were there, you knew it, and you had to tell this to the young people, and they didn't learn it basically at that media school? Was it that obvious? Was it already that clear?
Yeah, I mean, basically, what I am to Philipp is what Florian is to me, right? I mean, he's a couple of years older, and then I ran into him, I don't know, a couple of years before this incident with Philipp, when I was 30 or like 28, 27, like 13 years ago. I met Florian, and he was still like even before Rocket, and I noticed he was telling me about like the way he looked at digital marketing and SEO, and it all made sense. And then you know him, like the way he tells you about stuff, very analytical, very great storytelling. I was like, okay, this guy is right. And then I ended up in this very first crowd of SEO people like André Alpa, Philipp Klöckner, I think he's speaking here as well. All these guys, this whole brotherhood of early days marketeers. And it was very convincing. I mean, the whole SEO functionality was very convincing. And then after, I think Florian Heinemann and Chris Schagen and Max Moldner and these guys, they told me what they're doing. I set up my first SEO page, and it worked. I was making a couple hundred euros a month next to my job at a publishing house. And you can't beat trying it and listening to something or hearing something first, trying it out and seeing the results, and then being so obvious. And I owe a lot to those guys.
You mentioned something interesting now. So you basically, it's actually here on my list of the questions, and you named exactly the same people. So there is this brotherhood, sisterhood of the first generation online marketing: Flo Heinemann, Pip Klöckner, André Alpa, etc. All these folks, and I'm sometimes wondering, will there ever be, because they were the faces, the known people some years ago, and they are still. Is it time? Is it happening? Is it a gradual? Is it a slow process of when is the next generation kicking in, and how?
I mean, I think there's a next generation coming. I mean, we at OMR, we connecting with all kinds of people around certain online marketing topics. But I mean, today the whole industry. I mean, online marketing is an industry now. It used to be the Wild West, and it was very few people living in the Wild West, and creating and experiencing these adventures at the time. And now it's more of a professional industry. And then we're connecting with people now on Instagram, and it's completely different people from that work in search or that work in podcasting, all these things. So it's really. I think you can't own the whole topic anymore. You have to be a niche expert for Snapchat or for TikTok or these. But there's new people coming, but they are within those certain domains. So I think at the time, online marketing was one big domain. You knew about email marketing, about affiliate marketing, about search. It was all the same, and there wasn't much to know. And within 3 months in, you were an expert, and that was the crazy stuff. I was meeting these guys. I was setting up a website. I was doing some SEO, and within the same year, I was an expert by the standards of the time. And I think this has changed. Now it's more particular and more individual. But there's a new crowd. There's a new cohort of people, but you don't see them as general experts anymore.
There's a question here from the chat, and I'm not sure if somebody's setting me up, and it's a joke, but it says OMR rented the Hamburger Fernsehturm.
Yeah,
non-digital thing to do. What are you expecting from this? Is this true?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, maybe it's a fun fact for people in Berlin. I mean, when the opportunity came up to actually rent the Hamburg Fernsehturm for the next, the Teletower, the Alex of Hamburg, when the opportunity came up to rent this for the next 20 years, I looked around and I looked at the Alex in Berlin, like the huge tower at Alexanderplatz. And you won't believe how great that business is. They're having 1.4 million guests every year using the elevator. Like one elevator ride, I think in Berlin costs 14 euros. 14 euros times 1.4 million. So you do the math. This is just better business than, I don't know, the regular, I would guess, Project A finance business. And it is just, all you need to have is have the, be the landlord of this tower. And in Hamburg, it's not going to be as good. And obviously you have to pay rent accordingly. But I think it's an interesting business, like with the elevator and with the, working or activating one of the biggest landmarks here in Hamburg. And it's, in the end, it's content. Like such a tower, such a piece of architecture is content in itself. And that combined with the elevator business, I think is an interesting business opportunity.
Wow. Very interesting and very unexpected. I have one last field that or maybe one question. Let's see. And that is how, for you, the podcast is super important. The other aspects of OMR are very important, but the festival is an important pillar of OMR. How do you see that working next year? What are your plans?
We are very skeptical if there can be an event in the first half of next year. Probably can't be. We think there could maybe be an event in the second half of the year. This is our working thesis, that there could be an event second half of next year, that we are working against right now. But for us, the question, if we can run an event, is we don't have to make this decision now. We have to be ready, and we have to basically make a decision in January or February of next year, and to look. And then we always need 5 or 6 months of runway before an event to be able to create the event, to market the event, to sell the event. So we think if you looked at end of February, it's 4 months away from today. The world can be different by then. And then if you look at 6 months of runway, there could be the chance. But I'm also at the same time an entrepreneur. I'm preparing my colleagues here for potentially a year without an event. For us, what's important is not to get caught planning an event, spending millions, and then realizing a day before the event we can't do it. That's deadly. And we also don't want to be caught not doing an event and everybody else is doing an event and everybody's happy and being back at events. Then we want to be part of this. We want to be part of the first events coming back. So we have to make the right call, but we don't have to make it today. We have to make it probably early next year. And then let's see what the circumstances are like then. But I also tell my colleagues here motivational, but also true, I think, if there is not going to be events next year, it's a huge opportunity for us to drive our review business. Obviously, it's the next pillar, maybe the biggest pillar we ever started. We look at businesses, G2, Capterra in the US. We want to create that for the German market. Last valuation, I think, that G2 had is Excel, the London-based VC. I think you know them well. They financed G2 at a 600 million valuation. So all of a sudden, this could be the chance for me and for OMR to be a true digital business, to be a business that can grow further and bigger than an event ever can. So if we manage to grab just 10 or 20% of what G2 or Capterra do, we are in a completely new universe. We'll be talking big time investors. We'll be talking maybe, I don't know, building a 300-400 people company. And this gives us a completely new opportunity. And I think this is something we also want to jump on. And if there's no events, then we have a better chance of realizing this opportunity, because all the focus will be on this, will be on OMR reviews. and we'll be on and becoming the German Capterra, becoming the German G2. And maybe next year at this time, we'll be relaxed. We didn't have an event, but I'll be running a digital business that maybe Project A or other like leading investors want to look at. That could be the chance.
Sounds awesome. I see a lot, but really like a lot of questions appearing in the chat, but I'm sorry, but we just don't have that time anymore. Is there a chance you will stick around and be on Wonder on the networking format still a little bit so that, people can ask you a few questions?
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
That would be really awesome. In this case, Philipp, thanks really a lot. Thanks a lot for holding your speech here, for being for having this interview. It was very nice finally like meeting you, even if digitally, but in person. And I hope we stay in touch. And thanks a lot for that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for today.